Okay, let's get right into it. We're going to try to unpack Pakistan's recurring political nightmare. It's the cycle of crisis that just feels like it's on a loop. But if you look closely, a really distinct pattern starts to emerge. And honestly, understanding that pattern is the key to understanding, well, everything.
This quote really hits the nail on the head. For anyone who follows politics in Pakistan, what's happening right now feels like a rerun. Sure, the actors have changed, the technology is obviously different, but the script? The script is almost spookily familiar.
And that's really the big question we're tackling here. Why does this incredibly important, powerful nation seem to be stuck in this endless loop of conflict between its popular leaders and its powerful military? To get to the answer, we have to look back at the playbook that's been used not once, not twice, but now 3 times.
Which brings us to today, the latest showing of this political drama. The main characters this time around? The incredibly popular but now imprisoned former Prime Minister Imran Khan and the nation's powerful army chief, General Asim Munir. Their standoff is really the flashpoint for this entire crisis.
So let's just quickly get a picture of what's happening on the ground. You have Imran Khan sitting in solitary confinement. His party, the PTI, saw its supporters win the most seats in the last election, but they've been completely boxed out of forming a government. And at the very center of it all is a military establishment that has slammed the door shut on any kind of dialogue. It's a total political gridlock. And this quote from General Munir, wow. You have to understand, this isn't just tough talk for the cameras, it's a declaration. It sets the theme for everything we're about to explore. The general who simply will not talk. This isn't a negotiating stance, it's a hard, immovable line drawn in the sand.
Now here's where it gets really fascinating. This playbook, the absolute refusal to talk, the systematic dismantling of a political opponent, it's been pulled straight from the shelf. To understand what General Munir is doing, you have to look at the 2 generals who wrote the original script, General Zia and General Musharraf.
First, let's roll the clock back to the Zia era. In '77, General Zia overthrows the Prime Minister, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, and he didn't just sideline him, he had him executed. Then his daughter, Benazir, was put through a decade of house arrest, exile, and just constant pressure. Zia's goal was crystal clear: eliminate the Bhutto political threat entirely. He never, ever negotiated. The whole standoff only ended when Zia himself died in a pretty mysterious plane crash.
Okay, now fast forward 2 decades, 1999. General Musharraf overthrows Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. And just look at the pattern. It's almost a carbon copy. Sharif gets a life sentence, he's nearly executed, and then he's packed off into exile. When he dared to try and come back, he was put on a plane and sent away within hours. Again, zero dialogue, no compromise. The plan was to keep him out of the country forever. It was only a massive pro-democracy movement that finally forced Musharraf to step down. In this table, man, it just lays it all out, doesn't it? When you put these 3 eras side by side, the similarities are just uncanny. Look at the leader's fate: execution, exile, or now solitary confinement. The party's status: banned, made leaderless, or stripped of its election symbol. But the most important line is the last one: the military stance, a consistent, unwavering no compromise. It is the exact same playbook, just with different names on the cover.
So, the playbook is identical. But, and this is a huge but, here's where the story takes a critical twist. While the strategy is the same, the world it's being played in, the battlefield, has completely changed. There are 5 key differences today that make this crisis way more unpredictable and maybe, just maybe, more explosive than the last 2.
All right, let's walk through these because they are super important. First step: the social media revolution. Back in Zia's day, the story was whatever the state-run TV channel said it was. Today, it's a chaotic, global, digital free-for-all, and the state just can't put that genie back in the bottle. Second, instant electoral proof. In the past, parties had to wait for years to show they still had support. PTI's voters gave a massive thumbs down to the establishment at the ballot box just months after the crackdown began. Third, the powerful diaspora. This is now an organized, tech-savvy global movement that can apply a kind of diplomatic and media pressure that just didn't exist before on this scale. Fourth, the personality cult around Khan. His base is unbelievably loyal, which is a strength, but it also means the whole movement is dangerously hooked on one man who's locked away from the world. And finally, the goal itself seems different. This doesn't look like just sidelining a leader. It feels like an attempt at total annihilation, to erase a political party from existence, and that raises the stakes for everyone. Just to wrap your head around the scale of PTI's support, look at this one number: 33 million. Let that sink in for a second. That's how many people are estimated to have voted for candidates backed by a party whose leader was in jail and whose symbol was literally banned from the ballot paper. This isn't just a political party anymore, it's a mass movement. And that's a variable the old playbook just wasn't designed to handle. And here's the kicker: the repression isn't working. In fact, you could argue it's totally backfired. Polling data shows Imran Khan's popularity is still incredibly high, just dwarfing his political rivals who are actually running the country. This creates this huge legitimacy crisis for the government and the establishment backing them. I mean, how do you govern when the person people seem to have actually voted for is sitting in a jail cell?
So this brings us all the way back to that central mystery. Why the silence? If the crackdown isn't really working, if the popular leader's support is only growing, why not just negotiate? Why not find some kind of off-ramp? Well, the answer isn't really personal. It's structural. There's a deep-seated institutional logic that explains the silence. It really boils down to 4 key reasons, all rooted in the military's own culture. First, what you could call institutional arrogance. The army genuinely sees itself as the true guardian of the nation, and politicians as mostly corrupt and incompetent. Second, they have a zero-sum mentality. Any power that civilian leaders gain is seen as a direct loss of power for the military. Third, the May 9th protests, when military sites were attacked. For the army, that crossed a sacred red line. But the fourth reason might be the most important of all. To negotiate would be to admit weakness. It would be saying, we can't control this by force alone. And that admission could crack the entire foundation of their authority. So, given this incredibly dangerous stalemate, where does Pakistan go from here? Looking at the historical patterns, the source material lays out 3 possible ways this could all end. And to be frank, none of them are particularly good news. The most likely outcome, with a 50% probability, is called the long game. And this is basically the nightmare scenario. It's where Pakistan becomes a permanent hybrid state. You'll still have elections, but they're just for show. The military holds all the real power behind the curtain. The other, less likely options are that the leader's death ends the standoff, like what happened with Zia, or that immense pressure forces a resignation, like with Musharraf. But right now, all signs point to the system being rewired for permanent military control. And this really gets to the absolute heart of the matter. The problem isn't just one general. It's not Zia or Musharraf or Munir. They're all symptoms. The real disease is the political structure itself, a system where the military effectively has a permanent veto, where winning an election doesn't actually mean you get to govern, and where the will of millions of people can just be swept aside. But you know what the great irony is in all of this? The playbook of total repression. It's never actually worked in the long run. Executing Zulfikar Bhutto turned him into a martyr that fueled his daughter's rise to power. Exiling Nawaz Sharif transformed him into a symbol of democratic resistance. And now, imprisoning Imran Khan has only cemented his image as a defiant leader fighting a corrupt system. You know, it brings to mind that famous quote from John F. Kennedy: when you shut down every possible avenue for peaceful political change, when you ignore election results, ban parties, and jail your opponents, you create a dangerously pressurized system. You leave people feeling hopeless, and that is a truly dangerous place for any country to be. So, we end with this question. Benazir Bhutto had to wait 11 years for her chance after her father was removed. Nawaz Sharif waited nearly 9. They both eventually came back to power, but the fundamental structure that got rid of them in the first place, that never changed. Now a new generation is waiting for its leader. So the question isn't just about how long one man has to wait, it's about how long an entire nation of 240 million people has to wait for a system where their vote actually matters.